These are all local distributed attacks of horrorism, horrific attacks, not World Trade Center type things, but where we live, work, and play. Whether it's ISIS-K, whether it's the Al-Qaeda, the thing that we know is they love to outdo the last attack. They're not going to be casual about the next one. They're going to make it a point to make it bigger and more spectacular and more paralyzing than the last one.
9/11 was a $500,000 budget.
Yep.
Now the government has come out and publicly said that they have accidentally given them $239 million. We know it's more than that.
Yeah, that's a conservative estimate.
But we know it's 40 to 87 million a week.
Absolutely.
But even if it was just $239 million, well, that is what, 480 times, 478 times the budget that they had on 9/11.
Yeah, and they're 10x bigger, probably close to 80,000 fighters. I think they had something like a couple thousand before 9/11. I'll have to check those numbers. And don't forget, too, they just had a couple of operating bases in Afghanistan at that time. You had Tarnak Farms, which is near Kandahar Airfield, and a few others. But you've got every NATO base that we built over there. Camp Brown, you've got Bagram, you've got Bastion, all of the infrastructure, all of that was just left behind. So they've rolled right in on these bases with well-designed training areas and ranges. And they are training at a level that's unprecedented, and you think about that, the advent of technology that is accessible to them now. Think about the proliferation of drone technology that we're seeing coming off the battlefield in Ukraine. I mean, how fast has that advanced? Yeah. And we already see that the attack in Russia at the theater, October 7 by Hamas in Israel, these are all local distributed attacks of horrorism. Horrific attacks, not World Trade Center type things, but where we live, work, and play, right? And what I keep going back to is whether it's ISIS-K, whether it's the Al-Qaeda, the thing that we know is they love to outdo the last attack. They're not going to be casual about the next one. They're going to make it a point to make it bigger and more spectacular and more paralyzing than the last one. And what I've heard Sarah and others say is that all indications are that they have trained heavily in close quarters battle, local distributed attacks, and that there's a very good chance that the next thing we see on the homeland could be an October 7 style house to house, restaurant to restaurant, synagogue to chapel kind of attack on a massive scale. Now you think about what would happen if you had an October 7 style attack in Houston, Akron, Youngstown, Dallas, Miami, all at the same time. I mean, what did the DC snipers do? I mean, think about that. You talk about a $500K budget, like the DC snipers shot out of the back of a car and shut down the Beltway for weeks. Imagine the systemic paralysis that would result from an October 7 style attack across 6 cities at the same time.
I mean, we know what that looks like. I want to say something. I think sometimes I feel like some of the information that we're talking about seems a little out there or maybe not out there because it's all happening, but it's hard for everyday Americans who have zero combat experience and are just going to work and getting by the day and not really. They're coming after you.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that we've learned being overseas, I think a lot of people think they're going to hit a military base.
Yeah.
They're going to hit a police station. They're looking for a fight. They're not looking for a fight. They are looking for the easiest target with the most casualties that is going to get on the news.
Yeah.
And where do we learn this from? We learn this from their tactics overseas. What do they hit? They hit markets. They hit mosques. They hit public places where there is little to no police or military. And that's what they're going to hit here. They're not coming after you because you're a hard target. They're not coming after me. They're coming after mom and her kids and dad that goes to his office job every day, that's who they're coming after.
Yeah.
You people better start paying attention to what the fuck is going on, because this shit is going to happen.
Yeah.
This is going to happen. This isn't a political thing. This is a country with zero borders. They've already caught people. They have no idea how many people have come across already. And this is how these organizations operate. And one other thing, these organizations are not competing against each other anymore. Now it's 21 terrorist organizations working together, training together in Afghanistan with one common goal, and that is us.
Yeah, and that's well said. And, they've broken through barriers, even the Shia-Sunni barrier, where Iran is very complicit in their work with al-Qaeda. We're looking at an unprecedented level of collaboration between state and non-state actors, also Shia and Sunni. That was, you didn't see that prior to 9/11, on certainly not on this scale, where Iran is offering sanctuary and resource support to al-Qaeda, who is a Sunni-based organization, and, Iran is Shia. And then you add to that, Shawn, the part that you're dealing with a meta-narrative here. This is a narrative that ends with the establishment of a caliphate in the West, and this
is a caliphate?
This is basically a swath of territory that is governed by Islamic law. It is an Islamist objective to occupy and govern through Sharia law. And it is administered by what they call a caliphate. And it goes way back centuries to, periods of Islamic expansion. And this is not, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that this is necessarily an Islamic narrative. It is an Islamist narrative. And I think that's really important to clarify here, because what we're talking about are very specific groups who maintain this very radical ideology that at all costs they will expand this caliphate of Sharia-governed territory into the West. And in order to do that, all forms of governance that are in existence today and ways of life must go. They cannot coexist. And so that level of commitment, plus they've already demonstrated through precedents their willingness to hit us right in the chest cavity. They want us in the fight. They need us to be in the fight, because that's how they bleed you from 1,000 cuts. So they're coming. They're not afraid of our military might. They're not intimidated at all. And then the other piece that, to your original point, and I think this is really important to hash out, you talked about, like, when you hear some of these things that Sarah talks about, or Legend, or me, it's easy to go, well, okay, you guys were veterans, you fought in the war's over, let's move on, because if there was a problem, the three-letter agencies would be talking about it, or the administration. But here's the thing, and this is really important to unpack. When Afghanistan collapsed in 2021, right, or even go back to 9/11, when 9/11 happened, the worst terror attack in our nation's history, as a nation collectively, we said never again. It hit us so deeply that it was clear there was no really on-the-ground intelligence capability that could have gotten in front of this, because we had indications. Mm-hmm. And there was no ground strike capability. We weren't partnered with the Northern Alliance. There was no partner force in the country. So we didn't really have any ability to strike. All we had was over the horizon. Sound familiar? So for 20 years, as a nation, we invested, and as NATO, we invested in building an intelligence apparatus that would prevent another safe haven and deep strike on the states, and a partner force that could be the antibody to violent extremism in that safe haven. And we did both. We built those. We bled for them. We lost friends for them. We gave up our youth for that. And then on August 15th, 2021, an administration literally turned the page on that like it never even happened, like it was a ServPro commercial. And we walked away from 30,000 commandos. We abandoned 98% of our human intelligence and just left it behind. And then we decided that we would deal with the Taliban as a legitimate state actor. And we would pay them humanitarian resources and counter-terror dollars to go after ISIS, because somehow we feel like they can actually target them and they're at odds. But So in doing that, what we actually did, and then these veterans groups from all over the country, there were hundreds of them. Pineapple was one of many. But we picked up the phone and we answered the phone when the government didn't and nobody was coming in. We were talking to intelligence operatives. We were talking to Afghan commandos and special forces members who had nowhere else to go. And these veterans, Shawn, they never hung up the phone. They never hung up the phone in 3 years. They've cashed in their 401ks for safe houses. They've cashed in their kids' college funds to pay for food drops, because these commandos and special forces and intel operatives, they can't show their face in public, right? So they've kept them alive and they've stayed on the phone with them. So when you have people like Sarah Adams, her network in that country is amazing. And the people that she's talking to are normally the people who'd be talking to three-letter agencies. But guess what? They don't trust those three-letter agencies at all. And those three-letter agencies and our administration clearly is not interested. I mean, we asked Masood, are you talking to any? Nope. And so, as weird as it is, and as strange as it is, and it's like the Twilight Zone. I believe the GWAT generation, specific veterans and intelligence pros in that generation, have more high fidelity information about what's coming to the homeland than our own government.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.